The knock came late in the afternoon, the kind that carries weight before it ever lands on wood, and in that moment he felt the strange certainty that something precious was about to be taken from him forever. If this were you, standing there with your coffee gone cold and your inbox still half full of hope, would you open the door quickly, or would you hesitate, wishing time might slow down just enough to let you breathe? Marcus Reed had spent 12 years proving himself in a glass and steel office building outside Columbus, Ohio, believing that loyalty and silence were currencies that never lost value. He was the kind of man who arrived early and left late, who learned the rhythm of the elevators and the way the light fell through the windows at 4:30 in winter. He believed that steady effort would be seen eventually, that someone would notice the nights he skipped dinner to finish reports, the weekends he worked while others rested. Like many people who grew up in church basements and small-town pews, Marcus had been taught that humility was strength, and that patience would always be rewarded. Life, however, had been quietly unraveling outside the office walls. His wife, Hannah, had once laughed easily, the sound filling rooms like warm music, but the laughter faded after her mother's long illness and the medical bills that followed. Their home in a quiet suburban neighborhood became a place of whispered prayers and unpaid envelopes stacked on the kitchen counter. Marcus told himself that once his next review came through, once the promotion he had been promised finally arrived, everything would settle. He did not notice how tired Hannah looked when she stood by the front door each evening, or how her questions carried a softness that sounded like fear. The day everything ended was unremarkable on the surface. The sky was pale, the parking lot half empty, the office humming with the low sound of printers and keyboards. Marcus had been reviewing numbers when he sensed movement in the hallway, a pause, and then the knock. His boss, Richard Collins, stood there with eyes red and unfocused, a man who had preached efficiency and profit margins now struggling to steady his breath. Without saying a word, Richard's shoulders shook, and tears fell freely, the kind that come from a place deeper than embarrassment. Marcus felt his own chest tighten, the air suddenly thin, as he realized that whatever was coming had already been decided. There were no harsh words, no raised voices, only the heavy truth delivered in careful, practiced sentences that sounded like apologies wrapped in policy. Budget cuts, restructuring, difficult decisions made far above their heads. Marcus listened as if from a distance, nodding when expected, feeling the strange calm that sometimes arrives just before a storm. He wondered, briefly and painfully, if this was how his father had felt years earlier when the factory closed, when faith had been tested in ways sermons never fully prepared you for. When Marcus left the building with a cardboard box under his arm, the world outside seemed unchanged. Cars moved along the highway, the flag near the entrance still waved, and the sun continued its slow descent. Yet something inside him had shifted permanently. At home, Hannah saw it in his eyes before he said anything, the way hope drains quietly, leaving behind a hollow ache. She held him without words, and in that silence, both of them understood that survival would require more than patience now. Days turned into weeks filled with rejection emails and polite phone calls that went nowhere. Marcus took temporary work unloading trucks at night, his body sore and spirit bruised. Hannah picked up extra shifts at the clinic, her kindness given to strangers while she saved her worry for the quiet moments at home. They prayed together, sometimes with faith, sometimes with desperation, asking questions they had never dared to ask before. Why had no one seen them struggling? Why had loyalty gone unnoticed? If you were in their place, would you still believe that unseen effort mattered? The answer came in an unexpected way. One evening, months later, as winter softened into early spring, there was another knock at their front door. Marcus opened it to find Richard standing there, no briefcase this time, only regret written plainly across his face. He had come not with a job offer, but with a confession that had weighed on him since that afternoon. He spoke of missed signs, of a company culture that rewarded noise over substance, of a man he had failed to truly see until it was too late. Tears returned, and this time they fell in a doorway that smelled of coffee and old hymn books. That visit did not restore what had been lost, but it did something quieter and perhaps more powerful. It reminded Marcus that being seen did not always come from the places he expected. In the weeks that followed, a former co-worker reached out with a lead, then a church friend mentioned a small nonprofit looking for someone with Marcus's skills. The work paid less, but it carried purpose, and slowly, the weight on his chest eased. Hannah's laughter returned in pieces, tentative at first, then fuller, and their home felt warmer again. Marcus never forgot the sound of that first knock, or the tears of a boss who finally understood too late. He learned that dignity can survive even the harshest endings, and that sometimes, the greatest loss becomes the ground where something truer begins to grow. Life did not return to what it had been, but it moved forward, shaped by humility, resilience, and a deeper compassion for those whose struggles remain unseen. Before this story ends, take a moment and share in the comments if you have ever felt invisible in your efforts, or if a second chance changed the way you see the world. If this story truly touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe, so more stories of hope, regret, and second chances can reach those who need them most.